What's up guys, Dan here. Thanks so much for joining in for another video. Now of course, as you can tell, we are not behind the simulator today. We're not sitting in the simulator today. That is my bread and butter here on YouTube. I do sim racing content, reviews and stuff like that. Today we're actually out in the real world in this beautiful country setting. Out here by Bentonville Battlegrounds in North Carolina, which is not far from where I live. And it's got beautiful driving roads, which you will see here shortly. I'm gonna hop in the car and take a drive and continue on with the video. But first, while we're standing here, I just wanna tell you why we're here. So as I said, I don't really do a lot of videos. I've trickled in some here and there over the years of automotive, like real world car stuff, but I don't do a lot of it here. That being said though, the whole time that I've been sim racing, and kind of the reason why I got into sim racing is because I'm a car enthusiast, I'm a driving enthusiast. So while you guys have seen the crazy sim racing setups I've had, I typically always have some kind of budget friendly sports car, let's just say sports car, out in my driveway that I drive daily and enjoy on the weekends, like on a nice weekend like today. It's normally it's very hot here right now, but for some reason this weekend it's like 20 degrees cooler than normal. So perfect example for this is a little bit of wind. So I do apologize, I forgot to get my wind muff or my little cat thing for my microphone that I've got here. So if you hear the wind, I do apologize for that. But look, the reason why we're here is because I want to talk a little bit about this car. So I've made some content on my previous cars, my Fiesta ST, my Focus ST, all my Minis, Mustangs, all kind of cars I've had. But again, it's not my bread and butter here, but I've never been so inclined to make a video on one of my cars this much ever. And so what I mean by that is I'm a content creator, but I also watch a lot of YouTube. So I ingest content as well, and a lot of it on a daily basis. And one of my favorite things to watch on YouTube is car content, real world car content. And, you know, I watch all the big guys like DeMuro, Straight Pipes. I love watching those guys. I think they do a great job. And I really enjoy taking their content in. But I'm getting a little bit annoyed lately because there's been this trend of automotive YouTubers, and I think it started with DeMuro and then people kind of trickled in after. They've been making these videos that are titled something along the lines of the best sports cars you can buy for around $20,000. Sometimes the video says under 20,000, sometimes it says at 20,000, and sometimes it says a little more than 25,000 or whatever. But in general, what they're doing is they're making videos saying that here's 5 cars, 10 cars, whatever it is, that is going to be like one of the best bargains and most fun vehicles that you can get for around $20,000. Now, here is where I get a little bit annoyed. I watch all of these videos sitting, hoping that they're going to talk about this car, but they never talk about it. It is never in the list. And to me, as an owner of this car, I do not understand how you can talk about a list like this of cars and not include this car, and also its close cousin, the Miata. So if you don't know this, and maybe you do if you're looking to purchase this car and that's how you found this video, Fiat and Mazda worked together on the 4th generation, which would be the ND chassis of the Miata, and Fiat worked with them, and alongside the Miata, they created this. Now this is a Fiat Spider. This specific model is the Abarth edition, so it gets different wheels, slightly different exhaust. It just overall has a generally a little more, in my opinion, sporty look. That being said, I test drove a bunch of the Lusso Spiders, which is like the luxury version, and those are great too. It's just going to be like, whether or not you pick which one, it's just going to kind of be like what visually you like better. I like the Abarth, that's why I went with the Abarth, but there's nothing wrong with the Lusso and there's nothing wrong with the Classica. Underneath though, it is a Mazda Miata. The suspension, the chassis, pretty much everything underneath. What's different is the body panels. All the body panels are different. It's got a different motor, and I can show you that. Again, I know it's probably a little bit windy here, guys, and we'll get in the car shortly. But the purpose of this video is I want to give my reasoning on why I think it's crazy that this car specifically is never on the list of that best cars for around $20,000. So I have owned personally two ND2 Miatas, so I can give you a little bit of a comparison to that too, and I will do that in a specific video by itself sometime, specifically the Spider versus the Miata. I will tell you briefly here that out of the three that I've had, including this one, this is what I prefer most. I had a 2019 ND2 base model, the Sport, so it didn't have the limited slip differential. There were a lot of differences. That was a soft top just like this car. And then I had a 22 RF GT, so it's the Grand Touring model. So it had all the bells and whistles, but it was a hard top. And I will tell you that my personal choice is I like the soft top, which is why when I was coming back to look for a car similar to a Miata, I ended up looking at these, because these actually are not available in RF, but that's a different video for a different time. But one of the big things that makes this different than the Miata, and one of the reasons that I think this car really needs to be on these lists, is the drivetrain, and specifically the engine. This is a 1.4 liter multi-air turbocharged engine. So the big differentiation between the 2 liter and the 1.4 here in the Fiat is it's boosted from the factory. Yes, it's a much smaller displacement, but it has boost. And if you're in the enthusiast world, like I've been, if you have a car that already has boost, as opposed to a naturally aspirated car, yes, they feel a little bit different when you're driving them. The torque bands are different. A car that's already turbocharged is significantly easier and most times much cheaper to get more power out of. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I prefer this over the Miata. And this specifically, this is not a fast car. Even with the race chip that I have here and the throttle controller and stuff like that, which I'll talk more about when we're driving, this is not going to be a drag racing car. It's not a straight line speed car. Stock factory, this makes about 170 horsepower. So it's not really that fast, but that's not the reason why you buy something like this. Now, for 500 bucks, you can get something like a race chip, which I did here. You can increase the performance quite a bit. Still not fast, nowhere near what I would call fast. Don't drag race people in Mustangs and stuff. It's not going to do that, but it gives it a little bit more mid-range power to make it fun in the twisty back roads, which is what I enjoy. That's what I like doing with this. Drop the top and cruise around. Anyways, I'll talk more about engine and stuff a little bit more later, and probably in another video. There's a car going by with a very loud stereo. Okay, so what we're gonna do here, and I know I blabber on, this is what I do. You guys that know me, you know this is what I do. I talk a lot, I love talking. So I will put timestamps in so you can jump to different parts that you wanna hear. Otherwise, just hang out and listen to what I have to say. So again, after all that rambling, what this video is about is my reasoning on why this needs to be on Doug's list, why this needs to be on these big YouTubers list, and why you're doing car enthusiasts why they are doing a disservice to potential car enthusiasts, not including this specifically. Yes, kind of the MX-5 too, but specifically this car here. I think you're just doing a disservice, and I think it's crazy. So we're going to start out outside, because I think one of the most stunning features about this car, and why I think is a crazy bargain at the price you can get it for, is the exterior looks. I mean, you have to admit, it's not perfect, and this car is a daily, so it's got some dings and some scratches and stuff. But generally speaking, are there many cars that look this good right out of the factory? I mean, this is especially in the Abarth edition, it's got extreme styling. It's a throwback to the original 70-ish, 1970, somewhere in there, models when Fiat made the Spider previously, the Fiat 124 Spider, I think is what it was called, just like now. Could be wrong. But anyways, it has a lot of signature body lines that really match that old car. The headlights are very similar. These two bulges that go up the center of the hood, and you can really see that when you're in the car too. It's just beautiful the way the body line comes down over the trunk, and then kind of, you know, just kind of has this angle where it goes over top of the door handles and stuff like that. I mean, it's beautiful. This is an incredibly beautiful car, at least in my opinion. And there are a lot of beautiful cars that are drop tops and stuff like that, but you typically have to pay big money for something like this. In fact, almost every weekend I get, and I read this on the forums and the Facebook groups and stuff, and I read that this happening to people who already owned these cars before I bought mine, and I didn't believe it, but in fact it does happen. Almost every weekend I get people that stop and they ask me what it is, because there's no Fiat badges on the outside, so that people aren't sure what they are, sure what this is. But I always get people stopping and asking me, what is this car? Like, I've never seen it. They're very rare. They'd only made them from 17 to 2020 here in the States, so there's just not that many of them, and they were discontinued after that. So people always assume that it costs a lot more money than what it is, but it's not. So depending on year and mileage and the model that you get, so of course the Classica would be basically the sport equivalent of a Miata. And then you've got like the middle of the road, which is more like a luxury oriented car, which is the Lusso. And then you've got this at the top, which is more sporty than it is luxury, but this is the most expensive one. It's the Abarth, because it's sporter. Makes it a tiny bit more horsepower, not much, not that it makes a big difference. But you can get one of these. I've seen them go as low as like 16 and some change. And now, depending on this one, when I bought it, had 11,000 miles. It's a 2017. It was pretty much immaculate, well kept. Everything's in good working condition. And I paid I think 21,000, which was probably high, if I'm honest. But when I looked at so many of them and this one was so clean, I said, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and grab this, because it's in incredible shape. So, point being, depending on mileage and model, you can get one of these anywhere from mid 16s I've seen all the way up to 23, even $24,000 for a final year model, which was a 2020, with all the good packages. So some of these come with Recaro seats, some of them come with Brembo brakes, just like the MX-5 up front. Some of them come with LED headlights, which mine does not have. The technology pack that comes with a better radio, Bose stereo system and stuff, mine doesn't have that. But it's a driving experience that is really the best thing here. So it's not really, it doesn't matter to me that I don't have all that stuff, really, because it's just the driving experience, which we'll talk about when we get in the car. But look, I mean, how can you not include a car that looks like this in that alone, that is just incredibly fun to drive, in a list for the best cars for around $20,000? I think it's insane. And so that is why I was inclined to make this video. So now we'll hop out and we'll hit some back roads. This is some of my favorite back roads. I love it out here in the country. It's kind of quiet, low traffic most of the time. So we're gonna get in the car here and we'll do some driving, and I'll tell you more about why I think this thing is so amazing. Well, I guess before we get in, I'll just briefly, while we're close, I'll show you that this is a 6-speed manual transmission. There's also a 6-speed automatic transmission, which I test drove in cars. There's nothing wrong with the 6-speed. It works fine. It's not the fastest thing in the world. In the Abarth model, you will get paddle shifters. In the Classica and the Lusso, you don't get paddle shifters with that automatic transmission. But if you're just looking to get one of these to cruise, which it really does good at, the automatic is fine if you don't want a manual. If you can drive a manual, personally, I know everybody says this, but there's a reason for it. Personally, I think if you can drive a manual, go ahead and pick up the manual, because it's just a more mechanical experience. And to me, it's more fun. But there were loads of different, let's talk about the interior real quick before I get in, because you're not gonna be able to see that much. So there were a lot of different interiors offered in this car, but if you know anything about MX-5s, it's basically the exact same thing. Okay, which is not bad, because if you've ever gotten a modern Fiat that is not the 124 Spider, you will know, you probably have seen that the interior quality is kind of subpar. It's not that great. I'll walk over here to the other side. It's not that great, right? Whereas since this was a direct partnership with Mazda, this is basically a direct copy of the Mazda. It's the exact same thing. with the exclusion of some different emblems. It says Fiat. Mine says Fiat on the steering wheel. The gauges look a little bit different, which you'll see. But man, the radio head unit, the climate controls, the seat shape is identical. There's just different material choices, you know, like this is partial leather, partial whatever you call that. Looks like a fake Alcantara, but it's really just a cloth. But it looks good. But it's actually, to me, it's a pro that this thing looks just like and feels just like the MX-5, because that's a really quality car and it carries over here. So we're getting a Fiat, but we're getting the quality interior that people have known and come to like from the Miata. But you can see one of the main differences, two of the main and almost only differences here on the inside of this car over the MX-5 is the 2017 and 2018. This is a 17, so the 2017 and 2018, hang on, let's turn off Joe Rogan podcast real quick. All right, and I'm actually going to turn, well, I'll show you this first. Anyways, the big differences here are the tack in the Abarth has the red surround, which I really like. That's one of the big ticket items I liked or wanted the Abarth for, because in the standard model, it looks good too. Slightly different font than the Miata, but it's just kind of the standard Miata thing in there. And then this one is a little bit different. Then 17 and 18 had the Fiat logo even in the Abarth. Now, I would advise, and I just couldn't find one, but I was looking at any year that was in really good condition. I would advise, if I was going to do it all over again, I would find an 18 or 19 year model, because there were options available that were not available here in the States on the 17 and 18. For example, 18 and 19s and 19 and 20s, you could get the upgraded Mazda exhaust, which was a factory exhaust that sounded a little bit better, a little more growly. I mean, this doesn't sound bad. Let's put it in sport mode. I mean, this sounds okay, right? It definitely sounds better than the MX-5, at least in my opinion. But the Mazda exhaust is more deep, more grumbly, has more pops and bangs and stuff like that. It just wasn't available in the earlier years. Same thing with they put a Fiat badge on the emblem, which is fine. I don't care if people know this is a Fiat. It is a Fiat. It seems to be this weird thing online where a lot of people do cover up the Fiat badge for whatever reason. I mean, this is a Fiat, why cover up the badge? And then the other thing that you could get in the Abarth model, specifically in the later years, 19 and 20, I believe, was the seats actually said Abarth on them, and typically in like a red or an orange font that kind of matched the piping here, the stitching in the dashboard. But yeah, if you've ever sat in a Miata, you're going to be very familiar here. It's got these same things that kind of disconnect, but you guys don't care about that. What you guys are here for, and the reason for this video, is I want to talk about the main thing that is so fantastic about this car, and that is the driving experience. This entertainment center, if you've ever been, or infotainment, if you've ever been in a MX-5, it'll be very, or any Mazda of this generation, it'll be very familiar. It's the same thing, exactly the same. But we are, for this purpose, because I think they might be flickering a little bit, we're actually going to turn the display off, so that's not distracting. And let's go for a little drive. So we're in sport mode, and when I pop the hood, you may have seen that I've got and I mentioned that I've got a race chip on this car. So it is making a little more than factory power, but really not that much. Again, this is not going to be a race car. This is a cruiser / corner carver, which is kind of where we're out here today. And this is the experience that makes it far outweigh its worth. I've had a lot of really good handling cars. Probably the best handling car I had was a Fiesta ST that I built. Some cows over there. We are out in the country. But it was a Fiesta ST, and I built it specifically to be very sharp, and it would actually like destroy these roads out here. Now this car won't do that. It's good, but it's not as sharp and as piercing. This is more of a relaxed ride. That being said, though, that doesn't mean it doesn't handle good. I mean, it really handles well because it's extremely light, just like the MX-5. It's a little bit loud in here, which is, you know, typical of a convertible, so hopefully you can hear me pretty well. But I mean, this thing handles very well, and it actually is an incredible balance between handling and comfort. Now, when we were doing the walk around on this car, you probably may have noticed that it sits up pretty high. I wish that it sat a little lower from the factory, but I fight with this urge to lower this car, because right out of the gate, they've done such an incredible job with balancing handling and comfort. If I would compare this to my minis, for example, I've had a bunch of minis, which are like small go-karts, similar in this kind of way too, but front wheel drive. Those cars handled really good. Actually, keeping the window, sorry. And stock, they did not handle as good as this. Close, it's a close second, but it didn't handle as good as this. Even though they didn't handle as well, they rode like bricks. The ride was so harsh and just terribly brutal on your body after a little while. And I didn't even have a JCW. Mine were Cooper S's, which was like middle of the road. And whatever they've done here with this car, and again, this is one of the things, I'll keep mentioning this is one of the things that I actually, that makes me prefer this over the Miatas that I've had, is the fact that even though this is a pretty compliant car, it's still much, it's not stiff per se, but it corners much flatter than the Miatas did. The Miata is a great car, but it's got this inherent safety net where there's a lot of body lean and body roll, and it's not just side to side when you're driving, it's also when you're stopping. So when you're hard on the brakes, the Miatas tend to dip very harshly. And depending on the situation, especially if you're coming from a background where you've driven very highly modified cars and you've got some experience driving fast, when you get into something like a Miata, that softness of the suspension is off-putting and doesn't make it feel like you're going to get inspired confidence out of it, because you're used to something that drives very flat. Now you can drive around it, they still handle very good, and they're really good for beginners. But like I said, if you've had any experience driving you know, sporty cars, I guess I would say, like real sporty built cars for back roads and stuff, or to track, autocross or whatever, you'll find that floatiness of the MX-5 pretty off-putting. Well, we don't really have that problem here. It is much more flat. The suspension is stiffer, but if I'm honest, even though it's stiffer, it still, to me, feels almost it feels almost more compliant than the MX-5s I've had, which is really weird because it's definitely stiffer and definitely flatter, which a lot of that has to do with the stock sway bars being stiffer. But also the dip front and rear, there's not nearly as much. Like if I was hitting the brakes now, you would really see in the MX-5 that the front end dips. But not even talking about MX-5 here, let's get back to this car. This car is just a joy to rev out. And I know you'll hear mixed opinions on that because this 1.4 liter is not really a high revving engine. In fact, it makes most of its torque and power from like 3 to 5,000 RPMs, 5,500 if you really push it. Now it'll make more noise and you can rev it out to the red line, which is 6,500, but you're kind of wasting your time if you do that. It's really not, it's not designed for that. But because of that little turbo, the meaty torque band that you get, around 4,000, 5,000 RPMs, it makes you feel like you're moving much quicker than you are. And I don't know, to me, it is just a phenomenal feeling. Not to mention that this car sounds pretty good. It is a tiny, tiny little 4-cylinder, but it sounds really good, even from factory. And I don't just mean the exhaust, I mean the engine note that you hear when you're driving around, even with the windows up. Most of the noise you're hearing right now is not the exhaust, it's the engine noise. And it makes a pretty damn good sound. And arguably, I think most people agree, and that's not full throttle, that's like a quarter throttle. But if you just listen, it makes a much more pleasant noise than the Miata. The Miata's 2-liter naturally aspirated engine is fine, and it's really rev happy, but it's not, to me, as satisfying to listen to when you're driving around. And then if you compound that with an aftermarket exhaust, which I've got several at home, it's stock right now for the purpose of this video. It's very, very easy to swap the exhaust out on this car, and I've got straight pipes, and I've got several different types of exhaust for this car, but right now it's stock. And even at stock, it's just a pleasant sound. I mean, even if you rev it beyond where you really should, it's just, I mean, it's not really gonna make much power after this, but it sounds great. And through the whole rev range. And then if you look over there, I drive this car pretty hard. I drive it every day. And I bought this car with 11, maybe just under 11,000 miles in March. That's about 4 months ago. I live 5 minutes away from work, and I've put that many miles on this car. It's got 17,501. And the majority of those miles are just fun miles of me wanting to get in here on the weekends and just drive these back roads for no reason other than the enjoyment of driving with the top down, with the wind in your hair. And so none of these miles, hardly any, maybe 5% of the miles I put on this car in that short amount of time are for commuting, even though I commute every day. The majority of the miles are just for the shit-eating grin of getting in a fun car like this and driving. And I know I'm not plowing through these corners for the video purpose here, because we're just chatting, but you really can. I mean, you can up the ante and you can go pretty hard on these back roads, and this thing will hold pretty high speeds while being it's a momentum car, so you need to get it up to speed and then keep it there. But the long and the short of the driving experience is it is like no other. I have had very expensive cars that were 3 times the cost of this easily, and they were not as fun as this little thing to drive. Now, arguably that can be said for the Miatas too, so they also should probably be in this category. But for me personally, this is even the better bargain, because for whatever reason, these were not that popular, but when they were brand new, price to price, the Spider was more expensive than the Miata. So when people were cross-shopping the two, they typically would land on the Miata, 1, because of the price, and 2, because the Miata's been around so long, it's very well known for reliability and all that stuff. So people generally just, the sales went to the Miata and people didn't buy these, and they've remained relatively unpopular and very rare. I hardly ever see another one of these in the town I live in. And even on Facebook groups, there's nobody really that close to me. They're all far away, so it's kind of hard to get together unless you're willing to drive 200-300 miles. But because of that, they discontinued these in 2020. And they're just rare. But what has happened recently is the prices of these have really started to plummet. Now, I can tell you firsthand that plummeting of prices is not in line with the experience you get from this car. I think it's just from the lack of popularity because of the cost compared to the Miata and other cars kind of in this price range that does this same kind of thing. But I have noticed on the forums and stuff that lately there's been this resurgence, I guess you would say, of popularity in these, so people are really starting to buy them secondhand. But right now, and that may affect the price, they may go up higher, but right now, these things are a hell of a bargain, especially if you can find one under 20,000. But even if you find like a mint example, a 2020, low mileage, perfectly clean, been garage kept, and pay maybe $23,000 for it, you are not going to be disappointed. In fact, I think it's going to be the far opposite. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room here. There is this reliability thing that I hear discussed, or I see discussed a lot online. Also, other YouTubers who make videos about this car, they tend to touch on the Fiat reliability thing. Well, I don't know why people say that. Of course, my car is very low mileage, but this motor that is in this car is basically corporate Mopar. This motor gets put in tons of cars that are just stereotypical corporate Mopar small cars, and it is very reliable, and the parts and stuff are actually not that hard to come by, and it's actually a great motor. I mean, it makes a great rumble, it makes a decent amount of power, it feels good to drive, and there's no real reliability issues. The one thing I would say to that, and I think this is where the reliability issues really stem from, is specifically to the multi-air unit that sits on top of this motor. So the intake system on this motor. So the multi-air unit, if you're not familiar with that, is very different than a typical intake system. The multi-air unit requires there to be oil pressure within the multi-air unit for the car to turn over and crank. Well, not even specific to this car, if you let any car sit for long periods of time, all the oil in the system falls down into the pan. That's no different here. All the oil falls out of the engine down into the pan. Unfortunately, that's including the multi-air unit here, and when that loses its compression, for a lack of a better word, what ends up happening is the car won't start, and you get these infamous no start events that you see people talking about on YouTube. You see them talking about on Reddit. You see them talking about on Facebook, on forums, whatever. And for some reason that is like the main thing that people talk about, and it gives this unreliability. But that's not the fact. That's not true. There's a couple different ways you can fix it. You can prime the system, which is kind of a pain in the ass. But look, I've never had to do that. If you're gonna buy a car and let it sit, don't buy one of these, right? I mean, I daily drive this car. I drive it every day. That will never happen to me. There's never going to be a time where that multi-air unit runs out of pressure in my scenario. But if you're looking for a car that you might just drive occasionally on a weekend, once a month or something like that, you may rather go with the Miata, because it's not going to have that issue. That car can sit forever and it'll start right back up, no issues. But again, that's just down to people letting their cars sit, and I personally never do that. And I'm pretty certain that if you're a car enthusiast like me, and you enjoy driving frequently, if you bought one of these, you would never have that issue either, because you'd be sitting in the house just waiting for an opportunity to get in this thing and drive it, because it's just so much fun. It is such a blast to drive. So for me, that's a non-point. I think for most driving enthusiasts, that would be a non-point. I think it's just for maybe the elite, the really wealthy, that buys this as a third car, or maybe even a fourth car, or something like that, and hardly ever drives it. That is going to be problematic. But then if you're in that category of person, you just might as well spend a lot more money and buy a Porsche 911 or something that is much nicer than this. Of course, you're going to pay a premium for it, right? But for the specific person looking for a reasonably priced, extremely fun, true sports car, and drop top at that, this is a really good car if you just avoid that kind of thing. And let's talk about, I commute it to work. It's primarily city. It takes me 10 minutes tops. It is stop and go the whole way. And still driving this thing on the weekends, like basically a bat out of hell. If I'm not recording, I'm driving this hard back here. And I'm still getting 27, 28 miles per gallon. What other car at this price point that can offer you this amount of enjoyment will net you that kind of miles per gallon? I can tell you, a lot of people will say, well, the Mazda Miata will do that too. Look, I've owned two of them, and it gets close to doing that, but it's not the same. for example, when I drove my Miatas this same way, I netted about 24 to 25 miles per gallon combined, and on the highway, it would get at most 33, maybe 34 miles per gallon, running about 75 miles an hour. And if you kick it up to 80 miles an hour, that would drop in below the 30s, 29, 30, something like that. This car, I can ring out on the highway, and at 75 miles an hour, so it's like 31, 3,200 RPM, just ringing it out, cruising down the highway, and it absolutely just sips fuel. I can get 40 miles per gallon driving like that. And so the Miata can't compare when it comes to that. Look, I'm not saying the Miata is a bad car, but there's a reason I've had 2 of those, and now I have this, and I'm more satisfied with this than I ever was with the Miatas. I mean, it is just a really good all-around car. Now, it's not perfect. Like I said earlier, I think the ride height is a little bit high, so I fight with that, whether or not I want to lower it. At the end of the day, this is just a Miata on the inside, and Miatas are very loud cars, especially on the highway. There's a lot of wind noise. I'm sure you can hear it. It's just not the most sublime place to sit. It's not quiet. It's not cool. It's comfortable. I find the seats very, very comfortable, actually, but that's subjective. Some people don't like these seats. I actually do like the seats. But it's windy. It's a windy environment. It's loud. And, you know, it is quite intrusive. I won't lie about it. But it's kind of something that you should expect if you're going to buy a car like this. These cars are designed to be as light as possible. And while this car weighs about 100 more pounds factory over the Miata, it's still extremely light. And part of that lightness is just the lack of things like sound deadening, and, you know, stuff like that, right? So it all adds to as lightweight as possible, so they don't give you a lot of the creature comforts that you may get in a more expensive car. That being said, though, it's still not so loud that you can't hold a conversation. Me and my wife ride in this car together all the time. There's plenty of room. We go everywhere in this. We can talk like normal. You can even, I don't even have the I think it's called the technology package. They get you like the nicer Bose radio, the LED lights, and some other stuff. And even though I have the base radio, it's fine. I can still hear it. I can play I can get the radio just as loud as I want with the top down. I still hear it. It's fantastic. There's really nothing wrong with it. Now, if you did get the Bose system and stuff like that, I don't think it's necessary for me personally, but if you like a better music experience, then maybe get the Bose. But look, this thing is just, it's phenomenal. It is really, really good. Now, I will say, this is slightly quieter on the inside. It's not much. It's a tiny, tiny bit, but it is slightly quieter on the inside than both of the MX-5s I had. And the first one I had was a drop top, just like this. And the second one I had was an RF. And this is, I'm 99% certain, of course I didn't drive them back to back, but I'm pretty sure I got more annoyed with the RF with the wind buffeting you could hear on the hardtop than I do in this car. And I did some research when I was looking at these, and it seems that's down to that the glass in this car is thicker. So the windshield and the side glass is actually thicker, so it blocks more of the wind. And then the top itself, I believe regardless of which model Spider you get, whether you get the Classica, the Lusso, or the Abarth like this one, you're going to get this additional sound deadening material on the top, which is typically only found on the Grand Touring model of the soft top on the Miata. So in general, I don't know what a decibel level would be, but just general driving around, this is a little bit quieter on the highway. But that being said, it's a loud car. I mean, it's loud. It's not going to be quiet in here, but that's not what you buy it for. And plus, any opportunity to where it's a nice day, you're going to have the top down, which that's loud by nature. But I will say, I've had lots of convertible cars, Mustangs and all kind of stuff, and this car is very, not quiet. Quiet's not the right word, but the wind is not intrusive at all. With the top down and the windows down, it's like pretty calm and collected in here unless it's like a super, super windy day. Now my Mustang, for example, if you put the top down, it was windy as shit in there all the time, right? So it kind of took away from the experience of driving it. But this is just as comfortable, I'd say, with the top down, if not more so, because you've got that open air experience, than with the top down, or top up. But either way is fine. Yeah, but this is just a fantastic, fantastic car. And I'll just shut up here and we'll do a little driving for a second. I mean, this thing will carve corners, guys. I mean, it's quick, you know? Now, if you can hear that noise, that if the wind is hitting the car, this is a convertible thing. If the wind is hitting the car at a certain angle, it is pretty windy out today. Sometimes it causes that ringing, but you can ignore that. I'm just kind of trying to prove to you that this thing handles very well. I mean, look, we're over 70 miles an hour, just kind of killing these corners. And this is bone stock suspension, stock tires. Nothing has been changed on this car, and it straight threads these corners like it's nothing, all while being comfortable. I mean, it's great. It's a really, really good car. It's a lot of fun. It's miles and miles of smiles. Yeah, the miles per gallon are just ridiculous in this car. It is phenomenal. Just realized my mirror has not been right. I'm on sport mode, so that's like middle ground on my tuner here. I'll do a little pull. There's 60, right? And we hit about 70. So the traction control did intervene a little bit there. The torque does cause the back wheels to spin pretty often in this car. So although you're not going that fast, the tires are trying to spin. And so if you have the traction control on, it will intervene a lot, which is fine. That's what it's there for. But yeah, I mean, look, it's not a fast car. It's not fast. You're not going to win any drag races. It takes a while to get to 60, even tuned like this. But it is plenty fast enough to be a damn hoot to drive around these back roads, and that's where this car belongs, is on back roads, up in the mountains, all that good stuff. The other good thing about this being a relatively low powered car is you can actually enjoy it on the road. I've had a lot of very, very fast cars, particularly ones that were hella fast in a straight line. But the thing is, they were only usable at the drag strip or sometimes on the highway if you wanted to be stupid like I was when I was younger. But on the road, you know, let's just take one of the many cars I had. I had a Coyote 5-liter V8 Mustang, 6-speed manual transmission, and I had it modified, but even when it was stock, even when it was bone stock, it had about, I think it was it was an early model, it was an 11, so I think it had 420, 430 horsepower, 400 foot-pounds of torque. Don't hold me on that, it was around that number. But even at the base stock level at that point, by the time you went through second gear, you were going above legal speed limit, right? I'm not saying I didn't do it, but it's not particularly safe and it's not particularly smart. And so you didn't really get to enjoy the car like you get to enjoy something like this. And this is included in the Miata here, but really specifically for this one that I'm talking about here. You can ring through these gears and you're still not going that fast, but the torque of the turbo specifically here for the Spider makes you feel like you're going fast. You feel like that push, you know, you feel like a push in your back, which kind of makes it feel like you're going faster than what you are. But there's second, third, we're not even hitting 60 yet. That's 60, right? So you can run through the gears. I'm in fourth gear, right? And so you can really run through the gears, man, and you can enjoy this car. And if I had done the same thing in the Mustang, I would be doing triple-digit speeds by the time I was in fourth gear, even, you know, halfway through fourth gear, even stock. And when it was modified, it was, trust me, way worse than that. So there's something to be said about a lower, I'm guessing with this tuner box, almost missed my turn here. I'm guessing with this tuner box, it probably makes 190 crank horsepower. Factory made about 170 crank, probably makes 190 crank. So it's probably 150, 160 horsepower at the wheels, which is not a lot. But it's enough to move this lightweight little car, and it's just a lot of fun. So that's enough blabbering, guys. Hopefully you enjoy this. If you're someone that's looking for a fun, sporty car, and you're looking in the budget 20,000 or less-ish price range, don't listen to Doug DeMuro and all these other people. You need to test drive one of these. They're out there. They might be harder to find, but it'll be well worth it if you can find one and find one that you like for the price. You don't have to have the Abarth. They're very similar. There are some things, I'll make another video. There are some things with the Abarth that I appreciate having over the standard Lusso or the standard Classic and the Lusso, but it's not something you actually have to have. I think the key, if you're looking between the Abarth, if you're making the decision between the Abarth and the Lusso specifically, you need to base that decision on which one you think looks better visually to you, because they both have a different look. The Lusso looks more classic and luxurious, like a Sunday cruiser kind of thing, where the Abarth has a more sporty appeal to it, which is what I like, and that's why I picked this car. It had nothing to do with horsepower numbers or anything like that. It was really just the way it looked, and I really love the way it looks. So I'm going to end this one here. I've rambled long enough, guys. Hopefully this was helpful to some people out there. And Doug DeMuro and you other guys, y'all are missing out and doing a disservice to the car enthusiast, not including this car in your $20,000 list. So fix the list, add them to your list. All right, that's it, guys. Appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video. We'll see you later.